All right, strap yourselves in, because today we are diving deep into a story that's blowing up online.
Ooh, sounds juicy.
It is, it is. We're heading over to the Reddit subreddit.
Ah, yes, the land of digital judgment.
Exactly, exactly. Where, people go to air their dirty laundry and ask that oh so important question.
Am I the a-hole?
Am I the a-hole? You got it. And let me tell you, this particular post, it's a real doozy. We're talking family betrayal, shattered trust, and even, get this, a custody battle over a newborn.
Wow, so we've got like the whole shebang.
We got the whole shebang. And just a heads up, folks, this one gets a little messy, a little intense, so buckle up.
All right, I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Okay, so the original poster, let's call her OP, to keep things simple.
Sounds good.
She explains that her sister, well, she had an affair with Oki's husband.
Oof, that's rough.
Yeah, and to make matters worse, the affair resulted in, you guessed it, a pregnancy.
Oh, wow. So talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly, exactly. So, OP, understandably, she decides to end the marriage, right? Cut ties with her sister, the whole 9 yards.
Makes sense.
But here's where things get really complicated.
Okay, I'm listening.
As a result of all this fallout, the sister ends up homeless.
Oh, wow. So now we're adding another layer.
Exactly. And OP's parents, well, they're not happy about it, not one bit.
So they're blaming OP for the sister situation.
You got it. Basically saying, hey, you should forgive and forget, family sticks together, all that jazz.
It's easy to say that when you're not the one who got betrayed, right?
Right, and OP, she's not having it. She even tells her parents, and I quote, it's just a shame she didn't choke on his. Well, you get the picture.
Yikes. Yeah, I think we get the picture. So there's some serious anger there.
Oh yeah, definitely some raw emotion bubbling under the surface. And it makes you wonder, right, OP's side, saying she doesn't owe her sister or her husband a single thing.
Makes sense. Like, why should she clean up their mess?
Exactly. And then you have others who are questioning, her lack of compassion for her sister and even the baby.
Right, because there's a baby in the middle of all this. It's not just about the adults anymore.
Exactly. So it becomes this fascinating microcosm of, like, societal views on morality, family obligations, all that good stuff.
I'm really curious to see how this all plays out. What are some of the arguments people are making in the comments?
Oh, there are some gems. Like, one commenter, 01 Happy New Yorker, they're like, okay, so your sister can't sit with your parents. Why can't your parents, help her out? Why does it have to be you?
Yeah, good point. It's not like OP is the only one with resources.
Right. And another commenter, Popular Anywhere 462, they jump in and they're like, especially if the kid's father wants to take care of his kid full time, why drag OP into a custody battle? Like, why is she even involved?
Yeah, it seems like some people are really protective of OP, like they see her as the victim and they're not about to let her get dragged into this mess any further.
You got it. And there's some commenters who are even speculating about the sister's motives,
Ooh, get the tinfoil hats out.
Like, maybe she's using the baby as some sort of leverage to get what she wants.
Interesting. So it's not just about who's right or wrong. It's like people are trying to understand the psychology behind all of this.
Exactly. And that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating, right? Because it's not just about the surface story. It's about all the layers underneath. The psychology, the motivations, the family dynamic.
Look at a real-life soap opera.
It is. It is. And you know what? Speaking of family dynamics, we got to talk about the parents' role in all this, because their reaction, or maybe lack of reaction, is really raising eyebrows in the comments section.
Oh, yeah, I bet. Like, what are people saying about the parents?
Well, one commenter, Patty Don't Start, they're like, hold on, you want your one child to be financially dependent on your other child. Where's your help?
Yeah, it seems like people are calling out the parents for not stepping up and taking responsibility.
Exactly. And another commenter, No Lay Centurion, they put it even more bluntly. They're like, you owe your sister nothing. Absolutely nothing. The same respect she showed you, the whole husband situation. He's got financial obligations to the child, not you. Your parents are concerned. They've got obligations to their daughter and granddaughter. You don't.
Wow, that's a mic drop moment right there.
Right. It's like people are calling out this, like, perceived hypocrisy and lack of genuine concern for, well, both the daughter and the granddaughter.
It really makes you think about those complex family dynamics, like how favoritism can create all these ripples of resentment and hurt feelings.
It's a whole tangled web, isn't it? And we're just getting started.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's keep unraveling this.
You got it. Let's dive deeper. Yeah, it really does feel like some of these commenters, they're holding up a mirror to the parents, making them actually face their own actions and biases.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of biases, I find it super interesting how this whole case brings up this concept of, like, making your bed and lying in it, you know? Like, there's definitely a chunk of commenters who are like, well, the sister made her choices, now she has to deal with the consequences, even if they're not pretty.
Right. It's a tough stance,
Yeah.
but it does bring up this question of like, where's the line between personal responsibility and compassion? You know what I mean? Like, is there ever a point where someone's actions are so bad, so egregious, that they lose any right to our help?
Right, right. It's this super complex ethical dilemma, right? And there's no easy answer that fits every situation. But I do think it's worth thinking about, especially in the context of families, right? Because that's where emotions run super high and the stakes are just like way more personal.
Totally, totally. And, while a lot of the commenters seem to be putting OP's right to protect herself first, like front and center, there are also a lot of folks who are expressing concern for the baby, the one who's caught in the middle of all this drama.
Yeah, for sure. Because, like, regardless of what the parents did, that little one deserves a stable, loving home, right? That kind of throws a wrench into the whole let them suffer the consequences argument, doesn't it?
It does, it does. One commenter, Jasba123, they put it well. They say, but at the same time, there's an innocent baby involved. And that makes everything way more complicated. It's not the baby's fault that the parents made these terrible decisions, and it really sucks that they're stuck in this whole situation.
Yeah, that's a good point. It reminds us that these situations aren't always so black and white, right? There's a lot of gray area. And finding a solution that puts the child first often means, like, taking a more nuanced approach.
I agree. And some commenters are even suggesting that OP could, think about helping the baby indirectly.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Like maybe pointing her sister towards resources or, offering financial help specifically for the baby's needs, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I see. Like a compromise, right? OP can keep those boundaries in place, but still make sure the baby isn't suffering because of the parents' actions.
Yeah, exactly. It speaks to the idea that sometimes the most compassionate thing to do isn't the easiest or the most emotionally satisfying. It might mean putting your own true feelings aside to do what's best for someone who's really vulnerable.
Absolutely. And then there's this whole other layer of discussion that pops up in the comments, and that's the legal side of things. Remember, OP mentioned a custody battle.
Oh, yeah, right. That adds a whole other level of complexity.
For sure. And some commenters are like armchair detectives trying to figure out the ex-husband's motives for wanting custody.
Like, is he trying to dodge child support, or does he genuinely want to be a dad?
Exactly. Reminds us that there are often like multiple ways to interpret a situation, and what might seem shady at first glance could actually have, deeper and more complicated reasons behind it.
Oh, totally. And I love how these online forums can become these mini legal think tanks, with people throwing out their own experiences and interpretations of the law. It's like a crowdsourced legal advice column.
Yeah. But of course, we got to remember, right? This is all just speculation, not actual legal advice.
Definitely. But then, this whole conversation about legal stuff, it leads to this really interesting aspect of the story. The debate about whether OP's post is even real.
Oh, yeah, of course, right? Whenever a story like this blows up online, there's always going to be those skeptics lurking in the shadows.
It's like that internet age skepticism, right? We've all gotten a bit more discerning, more careful about taking things at face value, especially when it's in those anonymous online spaces.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. So what are the skeptics latching onto in this case?
Well, commenters like Illustrious Run 4076 and Just My Opinion 67, they're pointing out that based on their understanding of U.S. law, the sister being homeless shouldn't automatically stop her from staying with her parents, even during a custody battle.
So they're poking holes in the story, picking up on details that don't quite add up or maybe contradict their own understanding of how things work.
Right. And then you have commenters like Covert Trash Watcher and Craving Seaweed Salad. And they're even zeroing in on specific parts of the post that they find, like odd or hard to believe, which makes them think the whole thing might be made up.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a good reminder that while these online platforms can be amazing for sharing and vulnerability, they can also be breeding grounds for like misinformation, exaggeration, even straight up deception.
It's a constant balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Trying to be empathetic to the person sharing their story, but also keeping that critical thinking cap on.
Exactly. We got to remember that while these stories can have a big emotional impact, the internet's a place where narratives can be easily twisted, embellished, or even completely fabricated.
So at the end of the day, whether or not OP's story is entirely true, there's no denying it struck a chord with the online community. sparking this complex and multifaceted conversation about family, betrayal, responsibility, and even the nature of truth itself.
It's almost like this one post has become this Rorschach test, reflecting back our own individual beliefs, experiences, and biases when it comes to like navigating the messiness of human relationships.
It really has. And, even if we can't say for sure if the story is true or not, it's definitely served as a catalyst for some deep reflection on loyalty, accountability, and the choices we make when things get tough.
And that in itself, that's a testament to the power of online communities, right? They can provoke thought, challenge assumptions, and spark conversations that go way beyond the screen.
Absolutely. And speaking of thought-provoking conversations, there's another really interesting element to this Reddit post, and that's just the sheer intensity and emotional charge of some of the comments.
Yeah, those comment sections can be a minefield, right?
It's like watching people's raw, unfiltered thoughts and emotions play out in real time. And some of those thoughts are pretty brutal.
It's like the internet gives people this shield of anonymity, letting them say things they might never say face to face.
You said it. Like one commenter, Luda Perry 1980, they just come out and say, well, we all know who the golden child is.
Yeah.
Short, sweet, to the point.
Yeah, no beating around the bush there. It sums up what a lot of people seem to be thinking, right? About the parents and their favoritism.
Exactly. And then there's this gem from Cute Shine 1701. I told them it was just a shame she didn't choke on his.
Yeah.
Well, you get the idea. It's harsh, but there's that crown emoji at the end, like they're proud of that comeback.
Whoa, that's intense. It's interesting how humor, even dark humor, can be a way to cope with betrayal and anger, right? But it also makes you think, like, is that level of vitriol ever okay? What are the boundaries of acceptable online behavior? What do you think?
That's a tough one. On the one hand, I get the need to vent, to let out that anger, especially after going through such a huge betrayal. But on the other hand, we got to remember that words have power, even online, right?
Right, exactly. Like, even though it might feel like we're just interacting with faceless avatars, our words can still have a real impact on people.
Right.
It's something to keep in mind, especially when we're having these emotionally charged discussions.
Totally agree. And it's not just anger and judgment you see in the comments, though, right? There's also this strong sense of camaraderie and support for OP.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, these online communities can be a source of validation and belonging, especially for people who maybe feel isolated or misunderstood in their offline lives.
Totally. Like X-Rax Says X, they actually praise OP for her savage comeback. They say, even if it isn't real, this comeback line is worth every blessing the Great Mother gives us mere mortals.
It's like they're celebrating her strength and her wit, even if the whole situation is a mess.
Right. It highlights how these online spaces can be these safe havens where people can share their experiences, find support, and even like celebrate their wins, no matter how big or small.
Yeah, it's like finding your tribe, Those people who just get you, who understand what you're going through, even if you've never met them in person.
It really is. And that sense of connection, of shared experience, it can be so powerful, especially when you're dealing with tough stuff.
For sure. It's like having this virtual support group ready to offer encouragement, advice, and even just a shoulder to cry on when you need it most. And speaking of support, there's another interesting theme that pops up in the comments. Setting boundaries and self-preservation.
Yes, because even though OP is looking for validation for cutting ties with her sister, some commenters are pushing her to go further, to protect herself from any more hurt or manipulation.
It's a reminder that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to create distance from toxic relationships, even if those relationships are with family.
Totally. Like No Cockroach 4248, they flat out tell OP to go low or no contact with her parents if they keep pushing her to help.
Yeah, that's a tough call to make, but sometimes it's necessary, right? You have to put your own mental and emotional well-being first.
Exactly. And then there's Hippy Dippy Gypsy, who goes even further and suggests OP take legal action to protect herself from harassment from her sister, even recommending a restraining order.
Wow, so we're talking serious measures here. It's a reminder that these situations can escalate really quickly and that putting your own safety first is crucial, even if it means taking drastic action.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that you have the right to protect yourself, both physically and emotionally, from anyone who's causing harm.
And sometimes setting those boundaries, as hard as it is the most empowering thing you can do.
It's about taking back control, making choices that align with your values and your well-being, even if it means going against what society expects or what your family wants.
Totally. It's about defining what loyalty really means to you and realizing that sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is to yourself.
It's powerful stuff. And it's
Ah.
all over this thread.
Yeah, it's a reminder that self-care isn't selfish, it's crucial.
Absolutely. And sometimes putting your own peace of mind first is the bravest and most compassionate thing you can do.
It's about saying, hey, enough is enough. I deserve to be treated with respect, and I'm not putting up with behavior that hurts me.
And that message of empowerment, of taking back your power, it runs through this whole Reddit thread, even amidst all the anger, the judgment, the speculation.
Yeah, it's like a thread of hope woven through the darkness.
Totally. It's a reminder that even when you're facing betrayal and pain, there's always a chance for healing, for setting boundaries, for choosing a path that leads you to more peace and authenticity.
And that journey, that process of self-discovery and empowerment, it's tough, but it can be so rewarding.
It really can. And sometimes it's those hard experiences, those moments of heartbreak and betrayal that teach us the most about ourselves and make us more resilient.
It's like they say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But in this case, it's not just about strength, it's about wisdom, about learning from those tough times and using those lessons to build a better, more fulfilling life.
And sometimes that means letting go of toxic relationships, setting firm boundaries, and choosing to be around people who support and uplift you.
It's about knowing your worth and not settling for anything less than you deserve.
Such a powerful message. And it goes way beyond this one Reddit post. It's a message for all of us, no matter what our challenges are.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing your own strength, embracing your resilience, and choosing a path that leads to more authenticity and self-love.
It's a journey worth taking.
Without a doubt. And often it starts with those tough moments, those experiences that force you to face your vulnerabilities and make choices that are true to your deepest values and dreams.
It's about turning pain into power, heartbreak into wisdom, and coming out of those dark times with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of who you really are.
And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this Reddit deep dive. It's not just about judging who's right or wrong. It's about seeing our shared humanity, our capacity for both good and bad, and our incredible ability to heal, grow, and create a life that has more meaning.
Beautifully said. And it reminds us that even in the darkest corners of Reddit, even in the face of betrayal and heartbreak, there's always a flicker of hope, a spark of connection, and a chance to learn and grow.
Yeah, it really is like this post has uncovered this fundamental truth about being human. Even when we feel totally alone in our struggles, there are other people out there going through the same things, offering support in ways we couldn't even imagine.
It shows you the power of just sharing your story, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's anonymously online, it can create this ripple effect of empathy and understanding and connection.
And sometimes hearing those stories, getting those glimpses into other people's lives, it helps us make sense of our own experiences, helps us find the courage to make those tough choices.
And speaking of tough choices, there's another piece of this whole Reddit thing we haven't really talked about yet, and that's karma.
Ah, right. That classic idea of what goes around comes around.
Exactly.
No.
And it pops up a lot in the comments, with people basically saying the sister is getting what she deserves. Like that commenter, Blue Green 1956, they say, karma came for your sister, and it did not hold back. Good. It's harsh, but it shows you how much people believe in this cosmic justice that you reap what you sow.
Yeah, it's like those stories we hear as kids,
Yeah.
the ones that warn us that if we do bad things will happen to us.
It's a reminder that our actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences are rough.
Definitely. But then it makes you wonder, is there ever a point where someone has suffered enough? Can pain really make up for doing wrong?
That's a deep question.
It is. It's a philosophical question that people have been debating for centuries.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating how this Reddit thread, with all its drama and conflicting opinions, becomes this place to explore these complex moral questions.
It really does. It's like this tiny representation of the human experience, right? Where we wrestle with ideas of justice, forgiveness, and that constant struggle between wanting revenge and feeling compassion.
And it reminds us that even in the digital world, even on these online forums, we can still have these deep conversations about things that matter. The complexities of relationships, good versus evil, the search for meaning in a world that often feels really chaotic.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into this Reddit rabbit hole, we have more questions than answers, right? Is OP the a-hole? Is the sister really sorry? Are the parents just enabling her? And in the end, who gets to decide what justice looks like in this whole web of betrayal and broken trust?
But maybe that's the point, right? It's not about finding those clear-cut answers. It's about embracing the messiness, the uncertainty, the gray areas that make us human.
It's about understanding that life rarely gives us easy solutions or simple moral judgments.
Exactly. It's about navigating those tricky situations with empathy, compassion, and a willingness to see things from different perspectives.
And ultimately, it's about recognizing that even when we're faced with betrayal and heartbreak, there's always the potential for growth, for healing, for a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Well said. So, on that note, we'll leave you with one last thought to chew on. In a world where loyalty and betrayal are often tangled up together, how do we navigate those complexities while staying true to ourselves and protecting our own well-being?
That's a question worth thinking about, both in our own lives and in the bigger picture.
It is. It is. So until next time, keep diving deep, keep those conversations going, and remember, even in the darkest corners of Reddit, you can find hope, connection, and a chance to grow.
Absolutely. See you all next time. Hey, and welcome back. If you thought that previous Reddit post was wild, you'll want to stay tuned for this one. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a Reddit post from the AITA community that you sent us.
Reddit, the internet's court of public opinion. It's fascinating how this subreddit has become a place where people seek validation advice or sometimes just a space to vent about their personal dilemmas.
It's true. And this particular post is definitely stirring the pot. The original poster, Dinah Jars, wants to know if she's the a-hole for grounding her 17-year-old daughter Lizzie and canceling her senior trip after discovering Lizzie was cheating on her boyfriend Jacob.
The situation is made even more complex by the fact that Dinah Jars is divorced, and her ex-husband, the very reason for the divorce due to his own infidelity, thinks she's overreacting. In fact, he's even offered to pay for Lizzie's entire trip himself.
Talk about a tangled web. To give you a clearer picture, Dinah Jars caught Lizzie flirting with another boy and even saw them kissing. But Lizzie continued to act like everything was normal with Jacob, holding hands and going out on dates with him.
It's interesting how Dinah Jars explicitly mentioned raising Lizzie to understand the importance of honesty and respect in relationships. This suggests that for her, Lizzie's actions aren't just typical teenage experimentation, they represent a betrayal of those values.
Exactly. And when Dinah Jars confronted Lizzie, she was dismissive and refused to break up with Jacob. That's when Dinah Jars decided on the grounding and canceling the senior trip. But of course, the Reddit community had a lot to say about that.
It seems like everyone has an opinion on how to handle teenage relationships and infidelity. Some users are firmly on Dinah Jar's side, emphasizing the importance of setting boundaries and teaching Lizzie a lesson about the consequences of her actions. Others feel she's being too harsh, arguing that grounding a 17-year-old over a high school relationship is excessive.
Oh, it gets even juicier.
Yeah.
There are comments suggesting that Dinah Jars might be projecting her own trauma from her ex-husband's infidelity onto Lizzie, punishing her for behavior that, while hurtful, isn't uncommon among teenagers.
It's certainly possible that Dinah Jar's own experiences are influencing her reaction. The pain of betrayal can be incredibly powerful and long-lasting. But it's also worth considering that Dinah Jars might simply be trying to protect both Lizzie and Jacob from further hurt.
It's like she's in a lose-lose situation. No matter what she does, someone's going to be upset. So let's delve into some of the specific comments and see what insights we can glean. One that jumped out at me was from Risofais, who suggested that Dinah Jars should explain to Lizzie the pain she went through after discovering her ex-husband's affair. They think this might help Lizzie understand that Jacob deserves better.
That's an interesting approach, focusing on fostering empathy and understanding rather than simply imposing punishment. It encourages Lizzie to consider the emotional consequences of her actions, not just the potential social fallout.
Then there's Sassy Pants 888, who picked up on the ex-husband's dismissive high school thing comment. They suggested that Lizzie might be picking up on her father's attitude toward infidelity, which could have some pretty serious long-term consequences.
That's a valid concern. Children often learn about relationships by observing the adults in their lives, especially their parents. If Lizzie sees her father minimizing the impact of infidelity, she might be less likely to understand the seriousness of her own actions. It's as though she's inheriting a pattern of behavior that could lead to problems in her future relationships.
It's like a cautionary tale reminding us that parents aren't the only ones shaping their children's views on love and relationships. The messages they receive from other influential figures can be just as impactful. And speaking of cautionary tales, Attitude and Effort 3 argued that we punish children for hurtful behavior like bullying. So why should cheating be any different? They suggest an ultimatum: come clean to Jacob, break up with him, or face the consequences.
This brings up a fundamental question about the nature of morality and the role of punishment in teaching right from wrong. Is cheating inherently wrong regardless of age or context, or is it a mistake that teenagers in particular should be allowed to make and learn from? There's no easy answer.
And then you have comments like Gertikuita24 reminding us that Jacob isn't just some random boyfriend, he's practically part of the family. Dinajars knows him, has a relationship with him, which makes watching Lizzie's deceit even more painful.
It really adds a layer of emotional complexity to the situation. It's not just about a theoretical lesson about right and wrong. It's about real people and real feelings. Dinajars is caught in the crossfire of her daughter's choices, trying to navigate the potential fallout for everyone involved.
And believe me, the Reddit community doesn't shy away from weighing in on all the potential fallout scenarios. Let's take a look at some of the different perspectives folks are offering.
Let's delve into that, but first, why don't we grab a quick coffee refill?
Sounds good to me. Back in a flash, everyone. Okay, we're back, caffeinated and ready to tackle some more of these juicy Reddit comments. One that really got me thinking was from Rose Gold Redditor, suggesting that Lizzie's behavior could be a way of coping with her parents' divorce. They even recommend family therapy.
It's a thought-provoking point. We often underestimate the impact of divorce on teenagers. It can be a deeply unsettling experience, leaving them feeling insecure and emotionally vulnerable. Acting out, even in seemingly hurtful ways, can sometimes be a cry for attention, or a way to regain a sense of control in a world that feels chaotic.
So instead of being a malicious mastermind, Lizzie might be a confused teenager struggling to process some pretty heavy stuff. That puts a whole new spin on things.
It certainly adds another layer of complexity, and it reminds us that as outsiders, we only see a snapshot of the situation. There's always more going on beneath the surface, particularly when it comes to family dynamics.
Speaking of things lurking beneath the surface, Fredo Pito made a comment that sent chills down my spine. With how Dinajars is handling this, the only lesson Lizzie might learn is don't get caught.
It's a sobering thought, and highlights a potential pitfall of focusing solely on punishment. If the emphasis is on obedience rather than understanding and personal accountability, it can create a dynamic where teenagers become more adept at hiding their actions rather than genuinely reflecting on their behavior.
Okay, that's actually kind of terrifying. So how do you strike that balance? Where's the line between discipline and letting teenagers learn from their mistakes? Several commenters argued that grounding Lizzie and canceling the trip is just too harsh, arguing that natural consequences would be a better teacher.
That's a perspective rooted in the idea that experiencing the natural fallout of your actions is a more effective way to learn than being punished by an authority figure. For example, if Jacob finds out about the cheating and breaks up with Lizzie, that heartbreak could be a much more powerful motivator for change than missing out on a trip.
I can see how experiencing those natural consequences could be more impactful. But what if those consequences involve hurting someone else? Is it fair to let that happen just for the sake of a life lesson?
It's a tough call, and there's no easy answer. Parenting is all about navigating these gray areas. Brogrammer in 1992 recommended putting the punishment on hold and having a conversation with Lizzie where she's treated as an equal, acknowledging the hurt her actions have caused, but letting her choose how to handle the situation.
Okay, I like that approach. It shifts the focus from punishment to accountability and empowers Lizzie to take ownership of her choices. And it seems like a lot of commenters are on board with this idea of encouraging empathy and open communication. Shelby Floud suggested encouraging Lizzie to put herself in Jacob's shoes and imagine how he'd feel if he knew the truth.
This idea of promoting empathy is crucial, particularly for teenagers who are still developing their social-emotional intelligence. It encourages perspective-taking, which can be a powerful tool for moral development. And it's not just about understanding the impact of your actions on others, it's about developing a sense of responsibility for those actions.
So we're not just talking about teaching Lizzie not to cheat. We're talking about helping her become a more empathetic and responsible person overall. And that brings us to another hot-button issue that sparked a firestorm in the comments. Should Dinajars tell Jacob herself?
Yes. The to tell or not to tell dilemma. It's a classic ethical quandary. Nod-Narb88 argued that it's the kind thing to do, while Rose Gold Redditor pushed back, saying it would be incredibly hurtful for Jacob to find out from Lizzie's mom.
Talk about a rock and a hard place. It's like there's no good solution. If Dinajars tells Jacob, she risks betraying Lizzie's trust and damaging their relationship. But if she doesn't tell him, she's essentially condoning the deception and potentially allowing Jacob to be hurt further.
It's a situation that requires careful consideration of the potential consequences for everyone involved. There are valid arguments on both sides. Some people believe that honesty is paramount, regardless of the potential fallout. Others prioritize loyalty and protecting loved ones from pain, even if it means concealing the truth.
Nikki2184 chimed in with a simple, "I would have told her boyfriend, but that's just me." But then Annoys the Fuzz countered, warning that intervening could just teach Lizzie to hide things better.
This highlights the delicate balance between protecting your children and allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their actions. Dinah Jars is facing a real dilemma. Does she step in and try to control the situation, potentially damaging her relationship with Lizzie? Or does she step back and let Lizzie make her own choices, knowing it could lead to further hurt for both Lizzie and Jacob?
It seems like a lot of commenters are worried that Dinah Jars is more focused on controlling Lizzie's behavior than on helping her understand the complexities of the situation. Eat Around the Rosie, for example, believes Lizzie is too self-absorbed to learn until she experiences the pain of heartbreak firsthand.
It's a cynical but perhaps realistic view of human nature. Sometimes people only learn through their own mistakes, even if those mistakes hurt others along the way. And this whole situation is further complicated by Dinah Jar's ex-husband and his role in all of this. Remember, he's the one who cheated, leading to their divorce.
Right, and Only Myopie points out that Lizzie is a daddy's girl, and he's been enabling her behavior by being the fun parent, showering her with gifts and trips. It's almost like he's setting a bad example, making it even harder for Dinah Jars to instill those values of honesty and respect.
This dynamic introduces a whole new set of challenges. Lizzie is receiving mixed messages about accountability and responsibility. On one hand, her mother is trying to teach her the importance of honesty and integrity. On the other hand, her father is modeling a very different set of values, ones that prioritize self-gratification and disregard for the feelings of others.
It's like a tug-of-war between two opposing forces, and Lizzie is caught in the middle. And speaking of tug-of-war, some commenters are even suggesting that Dinah Jars should consider sending Lizzie to live with her dad full-time.
That's a drastic measure, and one that comes with its own set of risks and benefits. Amy Lucy, for example, suggested that separating the sisters might be necessary to protect the younger one from Lizzie's negative influence.
But Lucas Salisbury countered that sending Lizzie to live with her dad could actually make things worse, surrounding her with even less parental guidance and potentially reinforcing those unhealthy relationship patterns.
It's a tough call. There's no guarantee that either living situation will lead to a positive outcome. And it's important to remember that ultimately Lizzie has her own agency. She's going to make her own choices regardless of where she lives or who she spends time with.
It's a constant balancing act, navigating the ever-shifting dynamics of the parent-child relationship as teenagers strive for independence and grapple with the complexities of the world around them. And as we've seen from this deep dive into the Reddit hive mind, there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Absolutely. There's no magic formula for parenting, especially when it comes to teenagers. Every situation is unique, every child is different, and every family has its own set of values and dynamics.
Sarcastic Pedant offered a potential compromise, suggesting that Dinah Jars tell Lizzie she can go on the trip if she breaks up with Jacob or comes clean to him about the situation. It's like giving her a chance to take responsibility for her actions and make amends before the consequences escalate.
It's an approach that blends accountability with compassion, offering Lizzie an opportunity for redemption while still setting clear boundaries. And it acknowledges that ultimately the most important outcome is for Lizzie to learn and grow from this experience, not just to be punished.
But Neo Sovereign throws a wrench into the works, declaring more ChatGPT garbage, and Walks Into Nowhere jumps on board, expressing frustration with people believing the post is real.
The ever-present skepticism of the internet age. It's fascinating how quickly people jump to the conclusion that anything that seems too perfect or too outrageous must be fabricated.
It speaks to a growing distrust of online information and the blurring lines between reality and fiction in the digital world.
And it highlights the importance of critical thinking and media literacy skills. We need to be able to evaluate information sources, consider multiple perspectives, and be wary of content that seems designed to provoke or manipulate.
Mean Display 8494 even asks Walks Into Nowhere for tips on identifying fake posts. And Sikh Kaleem Arm kindly provides some helpful advice, pointing out ChatGPT's penchant for perfect grammar lists of 3 and properly formatted M-dashes.
It's like a crash course in digital detective work, equipping us with the tools we need to navigate the increasingly complex landscape of online information.
Now back to the matter at hand. Specialist After 511 suggests a different tack, emphasizing values and boundaries. What I would have done is lectured her on what it means to be a good person and the damage she's doing to herself and a person she once cared for. Then tell her, I don't have this in my house, so if you want to be this type of person, then none of your dates are allowed in this house, including your boyfriend. I'm deeply disappointed in you.
This approach prioritizes moral guidance and character development over punishment. It's about setting clear expectations for behavior and establishing consequences that are aligned with those expectations.
It's like saying, I can't control your choices, but I can control the environment in which you make those choices. And Dolphin Sunset 1007 agrees, adding that expressing parental disappointment and emphasizing the family history of infidelity might be more impactful than grounding.
It's about connecting the current situation to a larger narrative, helping Lizzie understand that her actions aren't just about her and her boyfriend, they're part of a larger pattern that has caused real pain and heartbreak within her family.
It's like saying your choices have a ripple effect. They impact not just you, but the people around you, and they carry echoes of the past. Extension Peach 5274 throws their hat in the ring, advocating for Dinajars to tell Jacob herself. It seems like there's no consensus on who should deliver the bad news.
It's a tough call with valid arguments on both sides. Telling Jacob might seem like the most honest and respectful approach, but it also risks betraying Lizzie's trust and making it even harder for her to take responsibility for her actions.
It's like choosing between loyalty to your child and loyalty to the truth, knowing that either choice will likely have painful consequences.
And it highlights the importance of open communication within families. These kinds of situations often expose unspoken tensions and conflicting values, creating opportunities for growth and healing, but also potential for conflict and hurt feelings.
El Benzo believes Lizzie should be the one to tell Jacob, arguing that having her mom do it would drive a wedge between them. Illustrious Tooth 702 proposes giving Lizzie an ultimatum to tell Jacob within a certain time frame, or Dinajars will tell him, maybe even forcing a confrontation at Jacob's house.
These suggestions reflect a spectrum of parental involvement ranging from hands-off to highly directive. And it's interesting to see how people's opinions are shaped by their own experiences, values, and beliefs about the role of parents in their children's lives.
It's a reminder that there's no one right way to parent, and what works for one family might not work for another. And Miss Rostria 27 worries that getting further involved in Lizzie's dating life will just push her away and make her hide things from her mom in the future.
It's a valid concern. Teenagers by nature are striving for independence and autonomy, and parental intrusion, even when well-intentioned, can sometimes backfire, creating secrecy and distrust.
So it's about finding that delicate balance between offering guidance and respecting boundaries, knowing that sometimes the best way to support a teenager is to step back and allow them to navigate their own challenges, even if it means watching them make mistakes along the way.
It's a perspective that requires a certain amount of trust in our children's resilience and their capacity for growth, and it recognizes that sometimes the most valuable lessons are the ones learned through experience, not through lectures or punishments.
Cut Willing 92287 offers a rather cynical prediction. The daughter will be off at college, cheating on all of her boyfriends soon enough anyway. It's a bleak outlook, suggesting that some patterns of behavior are just too deeply ingrained to change.
It reflects a pessimistic view of human nature, but it also highlights the limitations of parental influence. We can guide our children, we can model healthy behaviors, and we can set clear boundaries, but ultimately they are individuals who will make their own choices.
And sometimes those choices will disappoint us or even hurt the people around them. But it's important to remember that even those mistakes can be valuable learning opportunities, helping them to develop a stronger sense of self-awareness, empathy, and responsibility.
It's about recognizing that growth is often messy and nonlinear, and that setbacks and failures are an inevitable part of the journey. Barclay Dalu believes Jacob deserves to know, and Dinajars should tell him. But Whitflow thinks Dinajars needs to make Lizzie do it.
It's that age-old debate about honesty versus loyalty, about who has the right to know and who has the responsibility to tell. And it seems like there's no easy answer, no solution that will satisfy everyone involved.
It's a situation that requires careful consideration of the potential consequences and the ethical implications of each course of action. And ultimately, it's a decision that Dinajars will have to make based on her own values, her relationship with her daughter, and her assessment of what's best for everyone involved.
Life Explorer 121 criticizes Dinajars, stating, "You are involving yourself in personal matters that are not yours to control or manage. She has to learn the consequences on her own, not the consequences that are delivered to her via your decisions. She is who she is, and she will learn her own morality lessons, not when they're being forced upon her, but when she has to deal with the consequences of her own actions, without you rescuing her or controlling her YTA."
This comment emphasizes the importance of respecting teenagers' autonomy and allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their choices. It's a perspective that recognizes the limitations of parental control and the value of allowing teenagers to learn from their mistakes, even when those mistakes are painful or difficult.
And Jellyfish Solid 2216 keeps it short and sweet. YTA, you're being weirdly involved in your child's love life. Take a step back. There's definitely a sense from some commenters that Dinajars is overstepping her boundaries, getting too entangled in Lizzie's personal life.
It's a common challenge for parents, especially as their children approach adulthood. It's natural to want to protect them and shield them from pain, but it's also important to recognize that their relationships and choices are ultimately their own.
Quietly scheming even suggests that parents who are too deep in their children's love lives are the reason why kids leave home and never talk to them again.
That's a bit of an extreme statement, but it highlights the potential for parental intrusion to backfire, creating resentment and damaging the parent-child relationship.
New Squirrel 40907 thinks canceling the senior trip is too harsh, suggesting grounding and making Lizzie tell Jacob as more appropriate alternatives. They argue that Dana Jars's approach teaches her children to hide things from her out of fear of losing opportunities.
It's a valid concern. Punishments that are perceived as unfair or disproportionate can often lead to secrecy and distrust. Children might learn to avoid sharing information with their parents for fear of judgment or retribution.
So it's important to create a climate of open communication where children feel safe to come to their parents with their problems and mistakes, knowing that they will be met with empathy and support, not just anger or punishment.
It's about building a relationship based on trust and understanding where children feel empowered to make their own choices, even when those choices are difficult or unpopular.
And that's a sentiment echoed by many of the commenters, emphasizing the importance of open communication, empathy, and respect for teenagers' autonomy. It seems like there's a collective wisdom emerging from this diverse group of voices, a recognition that parenting teenagers is a complex and nuanced endeavor that requires a delicate balance of guidance, support, and letting go.
It's a journey filled with both challenges and rewards, and ultimately it's about finding what works best for your family, your values, and your unique relationship with your child.
Well said. And to our listener, thanks for sending us this thought-provoking post. We hope this deep dive has provided you with some new perspectives and maybe even sparked some interesting conversations within your own family.
Remember, there's no one right answer, no magic formula for navigating these tricky teenage years. It's about approaching each situation with empathy, open communication, and a willingness to learn and grow alongside your child.
Until next time, keep diving deep. And remember, even the messiest situations can offer opportunities for connection, understanding, and growth. All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we are diving deep into a Reddit AITA post that is just wild.
It really is.
This one's got everything. Blended family drama, accusations of favoritism, and parental alienation. This post blew up.
It really did.
For good reason, too. So if you haven't seen it, well,
You're in for a treat.
get ready.
Yeah, this is a roller coaster.
So before we jump in, just a quick reminder that AIT is that corner of Reddit where people go to.
Basically put their whole lives on blast.
Exactly. Looking for judgment from the internet masses.
It could get brutal.
No kidding. That's what makes it so fascinating, right?
Totally. It's like a window into the human psyche.
And in this case, that window is looking into a pretty messy family situation.
For sure. This is a classic blended family dilemma with an added layer of financial disparity.
Okay, so let's set the stage. Our original poster, we'll call her Sarah, is 29 years old, married to Mike, who is 31.
Both have daughters from previous relationships.
Right, a 10-year-old and a 9-year-old.
And they have a baby together.
Trying to make this blended family thing work.
Which, let's be honest, is a challenge in itself.
No kidding.
Yeah.
But then you add in the fact that Sarah's ex-husband is, well, loaded.
Yeah, we're talking wealthy.
And he showers their daughter with extravagant gifts. Like, we're talking a brand new iPad for her birthday, followed by a lavish party.
Oh, wow.
And a trip to Disney World. And then for Christmas.
Don't even get me started on the Christmas haul.
It was insane.
It's like he tried to buy out the entire toy store.
Right. And I get it. He wants to spoil his daughter. Maybe he feels guilty about not being there all the time.
Sure.
But it's creating some serious tension with Mike's ex-wife.
Understandably so.
Because she sees all these gifts and feels like her daughter is being treated unfairly.
And she's not keeping those feelings to herself.
Oh no, she is letting Mike have it.
Accusing him of favoring Sarah's daughter and neglecting his own.
And you can see how this is just a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. It's like a ticking time bomb.
The post goes into some specific examples of how this is playing out. Well, there's one incident where Mike's daughter gets upset because her iPad is old and cracked.
Makes sense.
While her stepsister is, of course, rocking the latest model, courtesy of wealthy dad.
Ouch.
Mike's ex goes ballistic, accusing Mike of putting another woman's kid before his own.
And what about the kids? How are they handling all of this?
That's the heartbreaking part. You can see how it's affecting them.
In what way?
Well, the post quotes Mike's daughter saying things like, "She gets 2 gads and I have none, and I don't want your hand-me-downs."
Wow, those are tough words to hear from a child.
Right. It's like she's internalizing all this tension, comparing herself to her stepsister.
And those feelings of inadequacy can have a lasting impact.
Definitely. And it gets even worse because Sarah says Mike's daughter has started repeating things her mom has said about Mike.
Like what?
Like how he supposedly favors Sarah's daughter and is a better dad to her because he provides more material things.
Okay, now that's a major red flag. That sounds like parental alienation.
Right. And this is where things get really complicated.
Because it's a serious accusation with potentially long-term consequences.
Exactly. But it's also not always black and white.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to tell if a parent is genuinely concerned or deliberately manipulating their child.
It's a fine line.
So, how do we even begin to unpack this situation? What are the signs of true parental alienation? And what can Sarah and Mike do to protect themselves and their daughters?
Those are the million-dollar questions, and we're going to dive into all of that right after the break. I think the biggest thing to remember here is that every child just wants to feel loved.
Right.
And valued.
Of course.
Regardless of their circumstances.
I get that, but how do you make a kid feel valued when they're literally surrounded by evidence that their step-sibling is getting more?
Well, that's where those open and honest conversations come in.
With the kids?
Yeah, you gotta acknowledge that things might not always seem fair.
Just admit it.
Pretty much.
Wow, that's tough.
It is, but it's important. And validate their feelings, don't dismiss them.
So instead of pretending everything's equal, we should be like, yeah, you're right, that sucks.
Not exactly in those words, but you get the idea.
Okay, so honesty is key.
And then shift the focus. Help them understand that love and care aren't about the number of gifts you get.
Easier said than done when you're a 9-year-old staring at a brand new iPad.
True, but you can focus on creating meaningful experiences, spending quality time together.
Okay, but how do you compete with Disney World? Seriously.
You don't. You create different kinds of special moments. Family game nights, picnics in the park, volunteering together.
I like that.
Even just movie nights at home. It's about being present, making your kid feel seen.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the bigger problem here? The ex-wife. The potential parental alienation. How does Sarah and Mike even begin to tackle that?
Boundaries, clear boundaries, and documentation.
So like every time the ex-wife badmouths Mike in front of their daughter, they write it down.
Exactly.
That's intense.
It is. But if they ever need to take legal action, that documentation is crucial.
And what about confronting the ex-wife directly?
Absolutely. They need to address those harmful comments head on.
But won't that just create more drama?
It might, but it's about protecting their daughter.
I see. So don't engage in the drama, but don't ignore it either.
Right. And if it's really bad, consider getting a family therapist involved.
So a professional mediator.
Exactly. Someone who can help everyone communicate more effectively.
Makes sense. And what about the online harassment? Sarah mentioned the ex-wife's family is spreading rumors online.
That's awful.
Yeah, they're calling Mike a deadbeat dad, accusing him of all sorts of things.
That's not only hurtful, it could also have legal implications.
Really?
Oh yeah, defamation lawsuits are a real thing.
So what can Sarah and Mike do?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Document everything, block the individuals, report them to the social media platforms.
Then if it keeps escalating?
They might need to consider legal action. It's about protecting their reputations and their family.
This whole situation is just a mess.
It is, but they're not alone. Plenty of blended families face similar challenges.
And there are resources out there to help.
Absolutely. Therapists, support groups, online communities. It's about finding what works for them.
It's a reminder that building a blended family is hard work.
It is, but it's also incredibly rewarding. It's about creating a new kind of family, one built on love and understanding, even amidst the complexities.
And sometimes that means asking for help.
Exactly. There's no shame in reaching out for support when you need it.
Well said. So what can we learn from Sarah and Mike's story? What advice would you give to other blended families out there facing similar challenges?
I think one of the most important things is to remember that you are not alone. Blending families is hard work, but it can be incredibly rewarding. It takes time, patience, and a lot of open communication.
So true. And what about those feelings of jealousy and resentment that we talked about earlier? How can parents help their kids manage those emotions in a healthy way?
That's a great question, and it's something we'll definitely dive into after the break. We'll be right back.
It's like we've almost created this culture of gifting to make up for not being there.
Yeah, it's like trying to buy your kids love.
Exactly. And in this case, it's totally backfiring.
Oh, absolutely.
Creating all this resentment and tension.
Because it's not really about the gifts, is it?
No, it's about the underlying emotions.
It's about feeling abandoned, replaced, maybe even a little bit unloved.
And then those gifts become a constant reminder of that pain.
Yeah, like a big flashing neon sign saying, "You're not enough."
Ouch.
So how do we break that cycle? How do we teach parents that love isn't about material things?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is, but I think it starts with communication.
Between the parents.
Yes, and with the kids.
So having those tough conversations about what really matters.
Exactly. Explain that love isn't about how much money you spend. It's about spending quality time together, creating memories.
And sometimes it means saying no to those extravagant gift requests,
Even if it means disappointing your child in the moment.
because you're teaching them a much bigger lesson in the long run.
Exactly. You're teaching them that happiness comes from within, not from material possessions.
It's a valuable lesson, for sure.
And it takes the pressure off the parents, too.
Right, because it's not a competition about who can buy the most expensive gift,
It's about building genuine connections.
which is what really matters at the end of the day.
Exactly. So circling back to Sarah and Mike's situation, what advice would you give them as they try to move forward?
Well, I think the first step is to really acknowledge the hurt feelings that are at play here.
Acknowledge and validate.
Right, both for their daughters and for themselves.
Because everyone's hurting in this situation,
Absolutely. And then they need to start setting those clear boundaries with the exes
especially when it comes to negative talk about the other parent.
and document everything.
Everything. Because if they ever need to take legal action, that documentation is crucial.
And if things keep escalating, they might need to consider therapy
Either individual therapy or family therapy.
to help them work through those complex emotions and develop healthier communication patterns.
Exactly. Because sometimes you need a neutral third party to help you navigate those choppy waters.
And let's not forget about the online harassment.
Oh, absolutely not.
That needs to be addressed head on.
Document it, block the individuals, report it to the platform,
And if it continues, they might need to consider legal action.
because that kind of behavior is unacceptable.
It really is. So, what's the takeaway message here? What can we all learn from Sarah and Mike's story?
I think it's a reminder that blended families are complex,
They sure are.
and there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right, every family is different.
But communication is key.
Always.
And so is setting healthy boundaries.
And seeking support when you need it.
Absolutely. There's no shame in asking for help.
Whether it's from a therapist, a support group, or even just a trusted friend.
Exactly. Because blending a family is a journey.
It's not a destination.
It's about learning to navigate those challenges together.
In creating a new kind of family, one that's built on love, respect, and understanding.
Beautifully said. And remember, even in the messiest of situations, there's always hope for healing and growth.
And that's what makes this story so powerful. It's a reminder that even when things feel impossible, there's always a way forward.
And sometimes that way forward starts with a simple conversation.
So if you're out there struggling with your own blended family dynamics, know that you're not alone.
There are resources available, people who care, and a whole community ready to support you,
And that's what we're here for too.
to offer insights, advice, and a little bit of hope.
Because even in the depths of family drama, there's always light to be found.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up.
It has been another fascinating deep dive.
It really has. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of human relationships.
Take care.
Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be kind of tackling the always fun topic of family dynamics.
Oh boy.
And this one comes from a Reddit post
Okay.
that got a lot of attention. And it's from that subreddit, Am I the A-hole? Or AITA for short.
Right.
Where people go and they describe a situation and ask the community to judge if they are the jerk.
Mm-hmm.
So this one's about a 27-year-old woman and her mom.
Okay.
And kind of the backstory is that years ago when she was in college and she was living with her boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
she wanted to have her boyfriend join her for Christmas at her parents' house.
Okay.
Now, mom said, absolutely not.
Oh.
You cannot share a room.
Oh.
You cannot share a bed. Dad was not in agreement.
Okay.
But mom's rule was law.
Yeah, those family dynamics, right? Like who gets to make those decisions?
Well, and it's interesting too, because right away
Yeah.
you see this clash between like traditional parental expectations
Mm-hmm.
and the reality of like
Right.
your adult children.
Yeah, yeah, especially if you've been living with somebody for a while and
It's-
like
this is-
you're building a life together.
Serious relationship, yeah.
And it's interesting how those parental expectations sometimes it can be difficult for them to transition into seeing their kid as
an independent adult.
an independent adult making their own choices and
Right.
having their own life separate.
Well, and it really hurt the listener because her boyfriend's family
Yeah.
was totally welcoming and accepting.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, she's kind of being,
Oh, that's got to sting.
judged or told that this is not appropriate.
Right.
So after that, she's like, I'm not coming to visit
Okay.
unless my boyfriend can stay with me and we can share a room.
Okay.
And mom doubled down and said, well, you're not married, so I'm right.
It's interesting, isn't it, how that word marriage
Yeah.
can be used
That's a trump card.
to like legitimize
Right.
certain behaviors.
Right.
But you know, relationships and commitment can take a lot of different
Of course.
forms and shapes and, you know. So it really is like, when do parents need to kind of adapt their expectations and just kind of recognize like these are grown-ups.
And this is their relationship.
Yeah.
So here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
2 years later, the listener's dad passes away.
Oh, okay.
Sadly,
Mm.
11 months later, mom has a new boyfriend.
Okay.
And not just a new boyfriend.
Oh.
According to the listener's brother,
Uh-huh.
this boyfriend was practically living at mom's place,
Uh-huh.
and they were very open about their affections.
So we see this double standard emerging.
Yes.
Where it's like, okay, one set of rules for my children,
Yes.
different set of rules for myself.
And this is so hurtful
Yeah.
to adult children because it's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
You held us to this, like,
Yeah, you had all
the moral high ground.
Yeah, values and morals, and now you're just kind of,
And now it's out the window.
chucking them out the window. Like, what's going on?
It's like she's trying to have her cake and eat it too.
Right.
She wants to, like,
Yeah.
enjoy this relationship, but not consider the impact on her children.
And it's interesting too because it's so common, you know, to
Yeah.
see this kind of hypocrisy play out in
Yeah.
families, and it can be really,
Oh, it's got to be devastating.
yeah, it's devastating, it's hurtful,
Yeah.
and it can really erode that trust and that sense of,
That foundation.
that foundation of shared values.
So the brother
yeah,
was so uncomfortable with the situation
yeah.
that he moved out.
Oh wow.
He just couldn't
It's
take
like I can't be here.
hearing them every night.
Yeah.
And instead of understanding,
Yeah.
mom was furious.
What?
She accused him of not being happy for her
Oh come on.
and defended her right to freedom as a grown woman.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, but like, how do you...
That brings up a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Like, how do we navigate grief in new relationships after the loss of a spouse?
Right.
It's a minefield.
It is.
Right. Because it's like, how soon is too soon?
Right.
How do you balance your own needs with the needs of your kids?
The societal
I'm
and
dealing with it.
expectation.
Expectations, yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like she might not be handling her grief in the healthiest way.
It sounds like she's projecting a little bit
Yeah.
onto the kids, right?
Demanding their support.
Yeah. Instead of sort of sitting with her own feelings,
Right.
she's trying to kind of...
Push it off.
Yeah.
Well, so then she
Yeah.
decides that she misses her kids
Okay.
and she wants to visit the listener for a week or two.
All right.
Guess who she wants to bring?
I have a feeling I know the answer to this.
The boyfriend.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
But the listener put her foot down and said, absolutely not.
Good for her.
You cannot share a room in my house.
Yeah.
Let alone a bed.
After years of you enforcing this on me.
Wow, yeah, this is a classic
Oh,
AITA scenario.
right.
Really interesting angles.
Yeah.
What stood out to you?
Well, the double standard is just like, whoa.
Like, in your face, right?
Like, how do you not?
Yeah, like, how do you not see this?
And then accusing them of not being happy for her
Yeah.
when they express their discomfort.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's just deflecting responsibility.
It's a way of kind of shutting down the conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of actually engaging with their feelings.
Exactly.
It could be that, you know, she's struggling to reconcile her own grief
Okay.
with those societal expectations of
Yeah.
moving on after loss.
Yeah.
You know, especially for women, there's often this pressure to find a new partner
Yes.
very quickly.
Right.
So it could be that she's seeking validation from her children.
Yeah.
To kind of quiet those voices in her own
Hey,
head.
deal with her own internal conflict.
Yeah, but by framing it as,
As, oh, you're a lack of support.
Not supporting me, yeah.
Yeah, she's shifting that responsibility for her emotional well-being.
Onto her kids.
Yes.
Which is not fair.
No, that's not fair at all.
It's like she wants them to just like...
Yeah, just rubber stamp her choices.
Yes,
Without any consideration for...
For their feelings.
Yeah.
Or their boundaries.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, it is.
You know-
It really is. And so then the question is like, how does the Reddit community react to this?
Right, right. Are they team mom or team daughter?
Yeah.
Well, it probably won't surprise you to learn that the vast majority of the comments were very much on the daughter's side.
Yeah.
Pointing out the hypocrisy,
Yeah.
the just blatant disrespect,
Right.
you know? Especially after
And
she imposed such rigid rules
Yeah.
on her own kids.
I bet there were some funny comments in that thread.
Oh, for sure. People were like,
Yeah.
suggesting that the daughter give her mom a taste of her own medicine.
Right.
But, beyond the sort of
Yeah.
desire for payback,
Right.
I think the consensus was clear. Like,
Yeah.
mom needs a serious reality check.
Yeah.
And she needs to acknowledge that double standard.
But I think this is where this deep dive gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because it's not just about who's right or wrong.
Right.
It's about
It's about the bigger issue.
the bigger picture
Yeah.
of boundaries, communication,
That way.
and how family dynamics change over time.
Yeah, as kids become adults,
Yeah.
those parent-child relationships, they have to shift.
Yeah.
And that can be really messy.
It can be uncomfortable.
Yeah, and sometimes people just don't know how
Yeah.
to do that.
Right.
Well.
So what are some tips for navigating those conversations?
Oh, man, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
I know, because let's face it, like,
Yeah.
most families experience some version of this.
Totally. Yeah, the my house, my rules kind of thing. Like, how have you seen this play out?
Oh my goodness. In so many different ways.
Like, how do you...
And it's tough because sometimes it's not even about the rules themselves.
Yeah.
It's about the underlying
Yeah.
power dynamic.
Okay, so
Yeah.
before we jump into solutions, like,
Yeah.
what are some insights from psychology that can help us?
Okay, so let's kind of unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
So this story, it really taps into those anxieties we all have about control, about change,
Right.
about the shifting sands of family relationships. On the
Yeah.
one hand, you have the mom
Yeah.
who's kind of clinging to that authority,
Right.
trying to impose her values and expectations.
She's stuck in that parent-child dynamic.
Yes, exactly, where she's calling the shots.
And it worked when they were kids,
Yeah.
but now...
Yeah, but it's understandable,
Yeah.
especially in families with very strict rules.
Yeah.
Or a strong emphasis on parental authority,
Mm-hmm.
and then you add in the loss of a spouse.
Yeah.
And that can really trigger a need for control
Right.
as that familiar family structure kind of crumbles.
So she's trying to regain that order by controlling her kids.
Exactly. And what she's not recognizing
But they're adults.
is that they're not kids anymore.
Right.
They are adults. They have their own lives,
Yes.
their own values, their own boundaries.
And that's where the conflict
And that's where it all collides.
explodes.
Because it's her need for control
Yeah,
versus the daughter's need for autonomy.
exactly.
And it's not just about the sleeping arrangements.
Right.
It's really about the message that those actions are sending.
Right.
That her new relationship
Takes priority.
takes priority over her
Mhm.
children's
Yeah.
feelings and their comfort. Yeah.
It's interesting, too, because you layer on top of that
Yeah.
this unresolved grief.
Right.
Like her husband just died
11 months ago?
11 months ago.
Yeah.
She's already got a new relationship.
Yeah.
And at least from her kid's perspective, she's flaunting it.
Yeah, and it could be
Yeah.
that she's rushing into this
Yeah.
to avoid dealing with the pain of that loss.
Is there a societal pressure for widows
It's tough.
to find someone new and move on?
I think there is, especially for older generations.
Yeah.
Where those traditional gender roles
Yeah.
and expectations around marriage and family, they're still
so
ingrained.
ingrained. Yeah.
Right.
So how can we help our listener navigate this?
Right, because it sounds like she's really torn.
She's stuck between wanting that relationship
Yeah, wanting to have
and also
a relationship with mom, but also wanting to
protecting herself.
protect herself.
Yeah.
So what advice would we give her?
Yeah.
Well, I think the first step is to communicate those boundaries.
Okay.
Very clearly and assertively.
Yeah.
Mom,
But calmly. Right.
yes, calmly without
getting
pulled into a big
Yeah.
argument. Right.
Yeah.
Not trying to change mom's mind,
Right.
but just saying like,
This is
this is where I stand.
how I feel.
This is what I need.
Right.
And offering alternatives can be helpful.
Okay.
Like suggesting maybe mom and the boyfriend stay in a hotel.
Or an Airbnb.
Yeah, an Airbnb.
So that way they can still visit.
Yeah, exactly. They can still have that
Good time.
time together, but
Yeah.
respecting those boundaries.
Crossing the line.
Right. And if mom resists
Yeah.
or tries to guilt trip her,
Right.
the daughter really needs to stand her ground.
And say, no, this
Yes, reaffirm those boundaries.
is what I need.
And it's going to take
It's going to take patience.
a lot of patience and clear communication.
But isn't setting boundaries ultimately about self-respect
It is.
and creating healthy relationships?
Absolutely. It's not selfish.
Yeah.
It's not controlling.
It's about protecting your own well-being.
But it can lead to a stronger sense of self.
It can.
Right.
Yeah.
And more authentic connections.
Yeah, because you're being true to yourself.
So assuming she can set those boundaries,
Right.
how can they even begin to repair this relationship?
Right, because it sounds like
There's
there's
a lot of hurt.
a lot of hurt.
A lot of hurt
Yeah, on both sides.
on both sides.
So how do you address that?
Yeah.
Well, one approach
Yeah.
is to encourage the listener to have a conversation
Okay.
with mom about how her past actions
Okay.
have affected her.
So expressing
Not just focusing on
her hurt and disappointment.
this current conflict,
Yeah.
but acknowledging those long-standing patterns
Right.
of control and disregard for her feelings.
So constructively without
Constructively
reprehensible-
accusations.
Exactly. The goal is to help mom
Right.
understand the impact of her behavior
Yeah.
and to create that space for empathy and repair.
What if she's not receptive though?
Right. What if she just digs in her heels? Well, if that happens, the listener might need to set firmer boundaries, like limiting contact
Okay.
or refusing to engage in those
Right.
hurtful or unproductive conversations,
Yeah.
So protecting yourself.
Protecting yourself, but still leaving that door open
Yeah.
for reconciliation.
If mom is willing to put in the work.
If mom's willing to do the work.
And this brings us to another really important element.
Oh yeah.
The listener's own well-being,
Yes, absolutely.
like taking care of herself
Self-care is so crucial in these situations.
and finding support,
Yeah.
whether that's with friends, family, a therapist,
Absolutely.
anyone who can provide a listening ear.
Yes. Because dealing with a difficult parent
Yeah.
can be so emotionally draining.
Yeah.
And having those healthy coping mechanisms
Yeah.
is vital.
It's a good reminder that she's not alone in this.
Absolutely not. This is a common
Dynamic, and there are resources.
and communities.
Communities that can offer support and guidance.
And so while this specific story
Yeah.
is about this listener and her mom,
Right.
I think it highlights those universal lessons
Absolutely.
about boundaries and communication and how those family relationships change.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about recognizing that those roles,
Yeah.
they shift and evolve.
Yeah.
And being able to adapt to that.
Now, before we wrap up,
Okay.
there's one more detail from the Reddit post
Okay.
that I think is worth examining.
Right.
Remember how the listener's brother moved out?
Oh, yeah, because he couldn't
Because he couldn't stand hearing them.
Yeah.
Well, when he confronted her about it,
Yeah.
she didn't deny they were being loud.
What?
She just acted like he was being unsupportive.
That's incredible.
It takes the hypocrisy
It really does.
to a whole other level.
It's like it shows a real
It's like she's completely oblivious
lack of awareness.
that people don't want to hear.
Yeah, most people, especially your kids,
Right.
do not want to be privy
Right.
to your intimate moments.
What do you make of that?
I it's hard to say,
Yeah.
Is she intentionally provoking a
Yeah.
reaction?
Is there some
Attention-seeking,
attention-seeking behavior going on?
or is she just so wrapped up
Yeah, or is she just so
that she can't see straight?
so caught up in this new relationship
Yeah.
that she's completely lost sight
Yeah.
of appropriate boundaries?
It makes you wonder if she's even capable
Right.
of having a healthy relationship
That's a tough one.
with her children right now.
Yeah. And ultimately,
Yeah.
only the listener can answer that.
Right.
But there are clearly some significant hurdles to overcome. It's
Mhm.
going to take a lot of
Yeah.
patience, communication,
And maybe some difficult decisions.
potentially some difficult decisions.
Well, thinking back to the Reddit post,
What advice would you give to the listener based on all this?
Oh, that is a really good question.
I know, right?
I think the most important thing for her to do
Yeah.
is to really prioritize her own well-being
Yeah.
and set some clear boundaries with mom.
Absolutely.
You know, it sounds like
Yep.
mom's behavior is really causing her
Yeah, it's causing her a lot of distress.
a lot of distress.
Yeah.
And she needs to, it's okay to protect herself.
Yeah. And that might mean
Yeah.
like limiting contact with her mom for a while,
It might.
especially if her mom's not.
Yeah, especially if she's not receptive
Yeah.
to hearing those concerns.
It's not about
breathing.
punishing her mom,
No, it's not about punishment, but it's about,
creating that space.
yeah, creating that space for healing and hopefully
Right.
eventually a healthier relationship.
But she has to take care of herself first.
Yes, absolutely.
And remember that setting boundaries is not selfish.
No, not at all.
And while she's doing all that, she can reach out to friends, family, a therapist,
Oh, yes, her support system.
anyone who could just listen.
Yes, because having that support
Yeah.
can make a huge difference
Right.
in navigating these kinds of
Yeah.
family dynamics.
And feeling less alone.
Absolutely, because it's easy to feel isolated
Yeah.
and to feel like you're the only one going through this.
Right.
But the reality is,
So many people
so many people.
deal with these exact same
Yeah.
challenges.
So while there are no easy answers,
Right. Every family is different.
yeah,
There's no situation is different.
One size fits all solution.
But I think some of the insights that we've talked about today,
Yeah.
like understanding the psychology,
Yeah,
recognizing those societal expectations,
absolutely.
learning how to communicate those boundaries effectively
Those are all valuable tools.
can be really helpful.
Yeah,
For anyone.
there's so many people.
Yeah. Who are dealing with similar.
Yeah.
And it's in those messy, complicated spaces
It is. It's where the growth happens.
that we can find
Right.
opportunities for growth and deeper understanding.
Yeah, both of ourselves and our relationships.
So I think we've given our listener a lot to think about today.
I think so too.
This has been quite a journey
Yes.
through the complexities of family dynamics.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that even the toughest situations
Yeah.
can offer chances for growth, understanding,
Yeah.
and ultimately stronger connections.
Yeah. And sometimes
So,
the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and our loved ones
absolutely.
is to create those healthy boundaries
Yeah.
and to communicate our needs honestly and respectfully.
Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, be kind to yourselves, keep those conversations flowing,
Yes.
and remember that even in the midst of challenging family dynamics,
Yeah.
there's always hope for healing and growth.
Absolutely.